Minister Designate Madam Esla Owusu Ekufo. Let's cross over now for the proceedings.
Boarding school at class 2 and continued through to Infantsman Girls, where I spent 4 years, and went to Laboni Secondary School where I did my O and A levels, and then on to the University of Ghana where I read law, Ghana School of Law. Did my national service. We did the two. So I did my post-6th form national service at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then the post-graduation one at the Legal Aid Board. I worked with Akufo-Addo Prempeh & Co. for about 10 years as an associate. Went on to become Special Assistant to the Attorney General and then Governance Coordinator in the Ministry of Justice. I left to form my own consultancy, New Consult, where we did legal, gender, and governance consultancy for a number of organizations, and then served as Acting Managing Director for Western Telesystems, Westel. Briefly, oversaw the privatization of the company, which was sold to Celtel, and Celtel was rebranded Zane, which has now been acquired by Airtel. And I left the company in 2009 and went into full-time politics, if I might put it that way, and stood as parliamentary candidate for the MPP for the Ablekuma South constituency before the constituency was split into two, and Ablekuma became the candidate for Ablekuma West constituency, won the elections in 2012, was pleased to represent them again in 2016, and that in sum is Esla.
Chairman, with your indulgence, any public life rules, any rules in the public, what has been your public life?
I'm not sure what you mean by public life, but I served on the board of the Ghana Investment Fund for Electronic Communications. I am a passionate advocate for the rights of women, so I speak quite passionately about promoting and protecting the rights of women and children and the vulnerable generally. I also advocate for persons with disability. I think we all need all the help we can get, but women who are physically challenged are doubly and triply disadvantaged. And so I am a self-appointed advocate for women with disability. I've also served on the Narcotics Control Board briefly, and I think that's about it.
Chairman, I know, okay, let me wait for Chairman's direction.
Well, honourable members, we will go through her CV. If there are any omissions or information that we want to request of her regarding her CV.
Chairman, let me start and yield to the Honourable Ablakwa. Ordinarily, I should start from page 1 of your CV, but I want to start from page 2. Yourself just indicated that you were a parliamentary candidate for Ablekuma South before it was divided in two. Look at the heading, political experience. You've not reported that. We've only seen Ablekuma West constituency. So in your own words, you indicated that there was an Ablekuma South. What period was that?
2011. I believe the primaries for the parliamentary elections for the MPP were held. And at that time, the constituency was Ablekuma South. I think in September or October 2012, the constituencies were split, And so at that point, I had to elect which of the two. Ablikuma South was split into South and West. So since my residence was in Ablikuma West, I opted to represent the people of Ablikuma West, yes.
Chairman, just the same, a little under board membership, December 2015, where Parliamentarians for Global Action, is it complete against corruption or promotion spousal rights or women's rights, or is just Parliamentarians for Global Action? Which of them?
No, PGA, Parliamentarians for Global Action, is a parliamentary NGO, and we advocate for a whole number of issues, including I am on the committee which serves. I've actually been elected to the executive board, so I represent Ghana on the executive board. There are over 100 parliaments represented in the PGA, and in 2005, December, I was elected to the executive board. We look at issues relating to...
I remember 2005, you are not a member of parliament.
2015, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. 2015, yes. PGA is a parliamentary NGO. I just leave it at that.
Chairman, let me bring him to page 1 and yield the floor to the Honorable Kujato Ablakwa. 1981, 1984, within this period, you are reported by your own CV to have finished both O and A level. Is that the case?
Yes.
1981, 1984, you completed both. Is that the case?
I wrote my O-level exams in 1982 and the A-levels in 1984.
I think she explained that she started at
I spent 4 years in Mfantsiman
before coming to...
and came to Labone in 1981, where I sat for both my O and A-levels.
My last, I may understand it, but the public may not. Chairman will guide me. 1990, called to the bar as what? Hope that it was not any other bar. You have not reported there properly. Other than that, which bar? Is it the Dansuma area? I'll yield to you.
I was admitted to the role of lawyers in Ghana, and in common parlance, it is referred to as being called to the bar.
That reminds me of somebody who says, oh, they say the lawyers, the bar people say they're on strike, but I don't eat at the chop bar, so why do I care? So this is not that chop bar kind of. Any other person? Honorable Kujato, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations, Honorable Elsu Kufo. I'll begin with your name as provided to us. The communication we have from the President, I notice a slight variation. If you can help us for our records. Also, Kufo is not hyphenated with the communication from the President, and there is also no G. You have an initial G on your CV. Can you tell this committee for our records, as you very well know, which of these renditions we should use and what the G stands for? I'm seeing it for the first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rendition I provide should be used, and the G stands for Gifty, which I'm very proud of. When I started, it was Gifty Ursula, and then I changed it to Ursula Gifty. So the G always is present somewhere. My parents thought I was a gift to them.
The way the nominee answers and gazes at us changes the forum for this special purpose.
Chairman, we'll try hard. We'll try hard. The number of children, do we have your permission to number, if you look at it, number of children? It came across as no. So I'm sure we have your permission to amend that. Yeah, but the number, the NO, Yeah. So we have your permission to amend that. And languages spoken, can you also let us know languages written as well, as our template provides?
I don't write very good Chi, but I do write passable Chi, but I write in English. Ga is only spoken. Mr. Chairman, even God doesn't want me to talk too much, so I've got a bit of a cold, so if you will indulge me. Passable enough to make myself understood, I hope.
That is
not to pass any exams, though.
To write
yes.
passable Chi.
Yes.
Wow, I'm learning something new, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the honorable nominee has not provided the committees she serves on in this 7th Parliament. Can you help us with that information, please?
I'm sorry. I'm not even sure which committees I serve on, but I know I'm on the Appointments Committee, and I think I'm on the Health Committee. I don't know which other committee I serve on, so if you could kindly make that correction for me, I'll be grateful.
Then, Mr. Chairman, can the nominee...
No, I'm sorry, Chairman, this is committees in this Parliament. You have served in committees in the Safe Parliament. You want to share that with this House?
It's provided. I was on the Appointments, Subsidiary Legislation, and Communications Committees. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, still on page 1 of the CV, I would like the nominee to help us understand what was happening in 1990. 1990, you were called to the bar. You indicate here that you were working with Akufo-Addo Prempeh and Co. as an associate, and at the same time, in 1990, page 2 of your CV, you were carrying out your national service at the Legal Aid Board. Can you please help us understand how you were doing all of this at the same time? 1990, working at Akufo-Addo Prempeh and Co., and also carrying out your national service as a legal aid officer at the Greater Accra Legal Aid Board.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. While doing my national service, I was employed as an associate at Akufo-Addo Prempeh and Co. But it worked because the legal aid officers were supposed to be attached to senior lawyers who would guide them in their work. And so Nana Akufo-Addo took on that responsibility and actually assigned Honorable Joe Gate to be my guide. So he's the one who was actually teaching me the ropes as to what to do and how to represent the indigent clients that were referred to me. So we didn't have any office at the Legal Aid Board, but I was using my office in Akufo-Addo Prempeh and Co. and receiving guest clients there and being assisted in my work by the senior lawyers in the firm.
Chairman, the Honorable Okujeto, pardon me again. Hey, referees, you have very high-profile, distinguished people as your referees, including His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Hope is not meant to intimidate this committee.
Mr. Chairman, I cannot intimidate this committee. It's not possible with the eminent personalities on this committee. It's a statement of fact. He's been my only boss, so to speak. I started my working life with him in his law firm. I was special assistant to him as Attorney General, and he has been a mentor to me throughout my life. So if somebody knows me and can give a character reference, I believe he's eminently a character and professional reference. I think he's eminently suited to do that. Thank you.
Honorable nominee, still on page 1 of your CV, it is observed that there is a 3-year gap unaccounted for between 2010 and 2013. Are you able to tell this committee how you account for this gap, 2010 to 2013?
Yes, I was literally unemployed because, and I was doing full-time politics at the time. So that's
Mr. Chairman, the nominee may have to help us later with the specific dates for a number of her conferences and her capacity building programs. I know that this tends to always create difficulty because you've given us the months and the year, but not specific dates. But we can receive that later. Page 2 of your CV, the leadership positions, there are a few open ends. Can you help us? 2006, President Rotary Club of Accra South. Was it just for 2006? You don't give us when that position ended. I don't know if you still hold the position. And then same for Vice President Law Students Union. You only give us 1987, 1 year. So it appears open-ended. Can you please close it for us?
Both 1 year positions. So Rotary year starts from June to June the following year. So I can do that correction. And the same with it's for the academic year for the Law Students Union. So I can also do that amendment. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, that will be it from me. The rest are just specific dates, which I'm sure the honorable nominee can let us have later. Thank you very much.
Chairman, since the nominee remains a strong advocate of women's rights, share your position with us on spousal rights and when you would support the introduction of a bill to secure that right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's a question which demands a whole lecture in reply, but save it to say that I believe that spouses are equal partners in a relationship and they complement each other. It is a shame that our Constitution provides for the marital rights of spouses to be enshrined in a law, and so far we've been unable to do that. I'm a firm advocate for the legal regime being put in place to protect whatever investment we all make in each other's lives. And so the last parliament, the bill was introduced and it had to go back for amendment. I'm hoping that we will see it in this parliament and we can all advocate for a legal regime which protects the rights of spouses within the marriage in the unfortunate event of the marriage breaking down, to that they can at least retrieve a little bit of the investment that they made in each other's life. Nobody should be worse off because a relationship which they believed would last for life ended prematurely, probably through no fault of anyone's. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just for the record, that bill was not returned. Very severe amendments were proposed, and there were so many that it did not find its way onto the agenda. But the most controversial issues, I think the women's groups are rethinking them. This cohabitation thing, they are rethinking them. So I'll urge you to leave it there before we generate that controversy here. Thank you.
Chairman, I chose my words very carefully. I'm not going down that road. Thank you.
Chairman, will you share with us what you intend to do to improve access to broadband in Ghana as Minister Designate for Communication?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The communications landscape is changing. We're moving away from voice communication to more of data communication. And we need to improve the speeds at which we can access and use data and the cost. And so thankfully we've inherited the Eastern Fiber Network, which has already been put in place. But it needs to be actualized. The fiber is on the ground. We're not deriving too much benefit from it at the moment. So we need...
So, Mr. Honorable Nominee, what will you do for the Eastern Fiber to be used to its optimum? What will you do? Practically, what will you do as Minister?
I was getting there. The National Information Technology Agency is the governmental arm which is mandated to operate and maximize the use of that fiber. It lacks the capacity and the resources to be able to do its work efficiently. It may need some form of private participation to assist it in its work. I know some moves have already begun in that area, which have already been mired in a bit of controversy. So we will resolve whatever pending issues there are, see to the equipping and resourcing of NITA to enable it to take up its full responsibilities and deliver the services that Ghanaians also need. And in addition to that, the Western corridor also needs a little bit of the fiber so that we would have a complete loop. We also have the oil and gas enclave, which, if served with fiber connectivity, can also assist the oil companies also do their work better and enable government to have even better oversight over their activities. So we'll enter into negotiations with interested parties to see how we can close the Western corridor and then develop the...
Chairman, sorry, close it. You haven't started it. Can you just indicate to this House that I intend to deploy fiber in the Western corridor? Then inform us, 1 year, 2 years, when should we, especially with the vital oil resource in that part of our country, we need to have broadband access there.
Some work has already started. We'll continue that and make sure that hopefully by the end of next year, we would have completed the fiber loop around the country. It is doable. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Barbara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Congratulations, Honorable Esla. We are so proud of you. You're a role model to us. We're looking up to you and looking beautiful too as well. My question is, the telecommunications industry is a lucrative area for national development. How do you intend to work with these private sectors, these private sector companies to ensure national development? I don't know is that okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is a private sector-led industry. And so for us to derive maximum benefit from it, we need to have a good working relationship with them. Thankfully, I've been in the industry before, and so the operators know that I understand the dynamics of the industry and would work very hard to ensure that, one, the citizens derive maximum benefit from them. Government also gets its tax revenues as and when needed, and they also have a conducive environment within which to work. The more they prosper, the more taxes we pay, the better services they'll provide. Everybody will be happy. Thank you.
Thank you too. Data internet is very expensive in Ghana compared to most countries. What are you going to do to bring the cost down for the poor?
I'm not sure if it is more expensive than it is. Accessing data is more expensive here than it is in the sub-region. But we need to do whatever we can to reduce the cost of accessing the service. And so we would work with the private, the sector operatives, the data, broadband, wireless operators, and the mobile network operators themselves to see what we can do, where we can derive the synergies which will help drive the cost down. As government is investing in infrastructure, it is taking away from them the capital investment that they would have had to put in place. So that would also help. Once we put in we've put in some of the broadband fiber infrastructure that they need to drive on. And so they can also lease some of that capacity from government, which will drive down their cost of delivering service, and hopefully the gains will be passed on to the consumer.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm done.
Sami Okujetu.
I'm most grateful, Mr. Chairman. My first question: are you in court with any of the telcos? In other words, have you sued any of the telcos? Can you tell this committee what the facts are? And can you assure this committee, if it is the case that my investigation is accurate, how do you assure this committee and this nation that going to be the Minister of Communications, you'll be a neutral arbiter and you'll be fair to all the telcos in the sector?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I indicated earlier, I was working with Designate Telecommunications until 2009. And on 8th January 2009, I was handed a letter disengaging me from the services of the company, indicating that my public appearances in the media were becoming an embarrassment for the company. And so, since they ascribed a reason for that, I took them to the Human Rights Court, that they had infringed my right of free expression and association. So it's purely a human rights matter. It has nothing to do with the work they do or their professionalism or anything. For me, it's a human interest case. And but interestingly, there have been moves to settle that matter for a few months now, and I believe we're close to conclusion on that matter. So Zain is no longer working in this country. The company is Airtel, and they have nothing to fear from me. The actors have changed. The company has changed. The nature of the case is personal, it's not professional, and I will deal with them in a manner which is in the best interest of this country, and would assist them as a company to also grow. And so I don't see any potential problems or conflict, particularly if the initiatives to settle this matter out of court also come to fruition sooner than later, as I expect.
Let us be clear. The action you're pursuing, who is the defendant?
The defendant is MTC International Corporation, which was the parent company of Zain, which has sold its holdings in Africa to Airtel, and then Zain Ghana, which is no longer in existence, as far as I know.
So, is the new owner in court with you, or is the old owners that are in court with you?
Well, the defendants are represented anytime we go to court.
But I want to be clear that the action, since the new owners took over, they have not been, it's still MTC, the action is against, is that right?
MTC and Zain Ghana.
Right, okay, that's clear.
But they are always represented in court.
Chairman, once the nominee is working subject to this committee and Parliament's approval to be the President's foremost person on advice on issues of communications, and the fact that she'll be working with these major players in the industry, will you consider abandoning this court action for a rapprochement to allow you to navigate well?
Oh, I believe that may even not be necessary in view of the state that negotiations have reached. So let's see how things go.
Chairman, let the nominee just make it unnecessary by assuring us that you let bygones be bygones. You are going into an industry which is a major contributor to Ghana's employment, tax revenue, and you want to start on a friendly note that each of them can walk to you, trusting that you mean well. Would you make this matter unnecessary?
Mr. Chairman, we've had a lot of conversations up to this point, and I'm sure, and I know that the current managers and the board members of the Airtel know that they have a friend in me, and so I don't think it will even be necessary. It may be overkill to do what Honorable Minority Leader is suggesting. The negotiations are very far advanced. I can assure you of that. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my second question. I want us to discuss digital migration now. In the next few weeks, we do know that the infrastructure deployment will be coming to an end. The transmitters are all set up. How do you envisage that you can assist in the guarantee of regular power supply to these transmitters? And how do you also plan to assist the poor, the vulnerable, who may not be able to afford digital television sets? Because that is the threat of digital migration, that if care is not taken, the poor will be left out once the switchover takes place in the next few weeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure about the switchover taking place in the next few weeks. The original timetable for migration was June 2015. It's been mixed. The deadline I inherited was September 2017. I'm still receiving briefings on it and looking at the state of deployment of the infrastructure. It may be necessary to extend the deadline. I don't know. Sitting here now, I can't tell you because we're still having discussions on that. And there may still be some issues with providing set-top boxes for the poor and marginalized who may not be in a position to afford new digital televisions. However, the original funding proposal for this whole project was the sale of 4G spectrum. It was anticipated that we'll be able to sell 2 blocks of 4G spectrum. We've been able to sell only 1. So there is a funding gap for us to meet currently to enable us provide the power that you so succinctly referred to power the network. It is important that we stick to the essentials first before we think about the other measures. So my priority now is looking for the financing to power the network that has been, the infrastructure that has been put in place. And then subsequent to that, we can think about looking for additional funding for the set-top boxes, which will enable those who have analog TV sets watch the new digital transmission. So once we solve all these teething problems or see our way clear in terms of timelines, then we can stick to, I hope that we'll be able to stick to the September 2017 timeline. But if need be, we may have to extend it because of the exigencies of the situation we find ourselves in.
Well, Mr. Chairman, my final question. Just behind us, the National Data Center has been built and completed by the President Mahama era. Last week, I read that a very important meeting took place at the Flagstaff House, chaired by His Excellency the Vice President, Dr. Baumia, on how to make progress on national identification so that we can get all of these scattered databases of Ghanaian identity IE, SNATE, Electoral Commission, DVLA, Passport Office, and NIA, and all the others. How we can begin to see some interrelation, interconnectivity, and interdependence, so that we can have one national identification database. What do you see the National Data Center doing in terms of this agenda to finally get for our country one database that can be reliable? We all know the advantages. It will help us to really transform the nature of this economy. It will help us fight crime, and the advantages are enormous. But for a long time, it has eluded us as a country. Now the National Data Center is ready. As you roll out this program, in your manifesto, you have given yourselves 1 year, that within 1 year, you hope that Ghana can have one common national database. How do you intend to achieve that using the national database infrastructure? How useful do you think that will be in the scheme of things?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As you've alluded to, we all understand the importance of having a proper identification system for our country. We've talked about it and done some work towards it since 2006, when the National Identification Authority was set up. Spent a fair bit of money, but we find ourselves in a situation where, because we don't have a proper national identification solution, all the various agencies which need data are investing in standalone systems which don't talk to each other. So we find ourselves duplicating efforts, wasting money and all that. The National Data Center is a very useful piece of infrastructure that we've put in. It has the capacity to host all the data sets in this country. And so, as we've indicated in our manifesto, we're committed to putting in place a functioning national ID system by the end of this year. Work has already started towards that. And we need not replicate the infrastructure that we've already put in. So all the national ID system needs to do is to use the National Data Center as their data warehouse, instead of replicating that infrastructure in their offices. And that will also go some way towards reducing the cost of setting up this infrastructure. It would help. And I am looking forward to the day where, by the click of a button, you can apply for a passport, indicate the time that you want it. If you want expedited service, you can indicate that on the application and on the monitor, pay for it using mobile money or credit card or e-switch or whatever, and it will be provided for on that same platform. Indicate where you want to pick it up on that platform, and then walk there and go pick up your passport by verifying your details with your fingerprints and your face on the equipment which we provided there at a location which is convenient to you, and pick up your passport and go. It cuts out the middleman. It cuts out fraud and corruption, because government will receive the cost of those services up front, and we can do it. So if we're able to deploy this national ID solution by the end of this year, as we hope to, and all the actors are also, there is the political will to do it. We all understand the urgency of it. It is not just convenient, cost-effective, and will cut out corruption. It's also a security matter. We can't have so many multiplicity of databases with our information stored on them all over the place. So at that meeting in the Vice President's office last week, all the actors agreed that, yes, we need to have one national database. As we speak today, I think there's a meeting ongoing currently where the technical committees who are actually going to see how these various databases are going to be linked, the when and the how, the fine details of how the system is going to be implemented, are actually meeting now to set up the committees to make it work. And so I'm hopeful that by the end of this year, we won't just be talking about a national ID card, but we will have a smart card solution which stores all the data that all the various agencies need on it. And they would have, it's all encrypted, it will be encrypted, so you can only access the information that you want. It provides certainty for the banks as well, for security, like I said, for immigration purposes, and make life a whole lot easier for us. It would also help us all to move closer towards the government led by technology that we're all advocating for. And I think we have the building blocks in place. We have the National Data Center, like you've indicated. We have the various databases in place. The information there can be upgraded, and even the national ID itself at that meeting indicated that they have 15 million, the information of 15 million Ghanaians stored on their servers already. So when the system is set up and is ready to go, you pick it up, your 4 fingerprints will come up. Updatable fields will show you, update your information, and it is possible to even get your card instantly. So let's all see how we can work together to ensure that we get where we want to get to make life easier for all of us. It is doable.
All right. Now, okay, let me start with the young man.
Honorable Esla, congratulations. I think the Ghanaian public, they mostly cry that the telecommunication companies are cheating them. And when you look into it, you realize that most of them open their data, and it's like it takes up the units that is on the phone. Will you consider education as a package to help the general public, such that it might minimize the rate of consumption of their data?
I didn't quite
Their
get
data
the question.
bundle.
If you could please repeat the question.
What I'm saying is that the general public mostly cry that the telecommunication industries are actually cheating them. We realize that they open their data, and then the data actually consumes their units, so to speak. Will you consider education as a package to educate the general public as to what to do to reduce the consumption of their bundles, data bundles?
Thank you. You're asking me to do PR for the telecommunications companies, but let me try. I think if you have too many applications open, it will chew up your data. So it is incumbent on all of us to know how to maximize the use of the bundles that we buy. And we like talking. Talk is nice, and it helps us to communicate, but it can also be expensive. That's why I think they have all these data plans which will enable you to manage how you use the credit that you put on your phone for whatever. So if my son taught me that you should configure your phone in such a way that the media isn't uploaded automatically, but then you need to prompt it to upload, so that if you don't really want it, you can delete it without it using up your data. And I think if we all learn those little tricks, our data plans would go a bit further than we want them to. But I sincerely hope that the telecommunications companies would also use this as an opportunity to educate the populace more on how to manage their data. But it is in their interest for you to use up your data quickly so that they can also make more money from you. But I think if you make people addicted to a plan which works for them, then they would be more inclined to use your services in these days that they can switch and people have multiple services from multiple suppliers, operators. So if I buy a 20 CD data plan and it can take me for 1 month from one operator, and the other operator's plan will only take me for 10 days, then I can decide that I'll stick with the one whose plan goes further. So it's in their interest to do a little bit more of the public education that you're forcing me to do for them this morning?
I think you didn't get my question well. It's like you are serving the public. You are.
Honorable member, you are getting into conversation now. I wanted to do a follow-up on this question because speaking, yes, then you will continue from there. Listening to the nominee, she is speaking from the point of view of the operator's explanations. We here, the consumers, the regulators are supposed to be standing up for us. I don't know what the regulators do for us, me as a consumer. But my personal experience, and I don't want to name the particular network operator. I have 2 SIMs in my phone. The same apps. I buy credit, 40 cedis on one, and it lasts a whole month. I buy credit on the other, and I make 2 calls. They say it is exhausted. I go there, I can't understand how. And they say, oh, maybe you have many apps open as they are suggesting. But it is the same thing on the same phone. So if it were the apps, then the other network should have also been consumed within the 2 days. That explanation, in my view, does not fly. Somebody must be standing up for the consumer against those that, in anger, I removed the SIM in front of them and put it in the dustbin. But the truth of the matter is, the consumer doesn't have any information on how the charges apply to their data. And this is where we want some assurance, some indication that the regulator will stand in for us, the public referee or protector of us, the data users.
I think what I can say to that is the best response that you gave to that operator was to vote with your feet, which is exactly what you did. None of them wants to lose a customer, and a good one at that. And so once they are confronted with the fact that the competition is doing so much better than they are, market forces would force them to also offer similar packages to enable them keep their subscribers happy. And that's the best way that introduction of competition can help to regulate and bring sanity into the industry. And yes, these complaints should be made to the regulator, who ought to take that matter up. And so I will discuss it with the NCA, and they are here, by the way. I will discuss it with them and see what better protections we can offer to the consumer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for reframing my question for me. The next one has to do with the then flag bearer, Nana Addo Dankwa. When he was in Karachi East, there were some major communities without network. And he promised that the moment he becomes the president, he is going to make sure Paripari, Tokurano, Asukoko, and Tutupune are hooked. Will you assure me today that when you assume office, you're going to work on this?
Well, will you wait when she becomes a minister? Then you bring this question to you bring this question to the floor. She then can give you the specifics. But ask another question, please.
Oh, okay. The next question is that's my second question. There are some communities without network. And now we know without network, you can't be part of the global world. What can you do to make sure that at least it's extended to the deprived communities?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think for most of the operators, commercial advantage is one of the key reasons why they decide to extend their network to a particular place where they can get some commercial advantage from it. But not every little corner of this country can provide the operator with that advantage. And so we have an organization whose mandate it is to provide the infrastructure which would make the companies extend their services there, and that is GIFIC. And I think the Ghana Investment Fund for Electronic Communication, they have done a fair bit of work in that area. It can't all be done at once, but they're in the business of providing the infrastructure and linking up unserved and underserved communities onto the telecommunications, bringing them into the telecommunications fold. They have also acquired VSAT, a satellite, which should also assist them do this work even quicker. So we will be working closely to ensure that as many of these communities which do not have access to telecommunications as possible in this country would also be linked to the telecommunications networks. And once the infrastructure is in place and it doesn't cost too much for the private operators to extend their services there, they would do that. I was having a conversation with one of them recently, and they were surprised at the speed with which communities linked up to the networks that they set up. They thought that there wasn't much demand in those areas, but once the infrastructure went there and they provided services there, they were very surprised at the speed with which the capacity was taken up. And so they're planning to do even more. I think they did 20 such sites last year. They're planning to do even more this year because they see that the capacity is there. Everybody has a mobile phone, even where there is no service. And so once the service gets to their doorstep, they would find that even where they didn't think they could make a profit, they could make a decent profit. So the hunger for telecommunication services is there. GIFEC would also assist to extend the infrastructure to the unserved and underserved areas. And the telecoms operators, I'm sure, would also follow up with their services. So hopefully, our whole country will be wired up in a very short while. Please don't ask me for a specific time because I can't give you that specific, but we're working assiduously towards that. When you confirm me.
Honorable Hello.
Thank you, Chairman, and congratulations. Let me say my sister. I've been wondering how your ministry's activities can benefit women. We're looking at all the issues globally, looking at issues in terms of how women and men will benefit, but what specific activities, or are there any specific activities you can do under your ministry to promote the cause of women or to help women have access to quality telecommunication services or communication services? Thank you.
That's a tough one. And at the risk of being accused of bias, improved access to telecommunications makes everyone's life easier, particularly for the woman. And so things that would have put us at risk previously, you can now sit in the comfort of your home and do it if you have better data. And it helps improve relationships too. I keep using this example that I probably wouldn't be married today if it hadn't been for Skype, because my husband doesn't live here and I live here, but thanks to the wonders of technology, we were able to sustain a long-distance relationship relatively painlessly, and there is honorable minority.
Chairman, I've been invited to ask the nominee whether technology conveys the exercise of conjugal rights.
You're out of order, please.
So yes, technology does make life easier, but while we're using it, we should also be mindful of the dangers. And so we need to also teach about more secure ways of using the internet and protecting our children from the predators who are out there. So there's a child online policy which has just been developed. I am still studying it, and then we'll see how to make that more effective. There's a Girls in ICT program, which is also helping a lot more girls, to lose their fear of technology and embrace it and use it for its more positive aspects. It also provides a lot of work opportunities as well. We can work relatively easily from the comfort of our homes. I lived in Japan many years ago, and several companies outsource their works to stay-at-home mothers. So you can stay at home and do the work and send it back to them. I'm looking towards a future where even new mothers can also stay at home, do their work online, send the results to their workplaces, and work according to their own time, flexible timing, not the 9 to 5, so that you can still take care of your home and keep up your own employment at the same time without losing too much, so that we can spend more time raising our children without losing the formative years to house help to raise them. It's a danger that women face particularly, and it is something that we can all work towards, using technology to make our lives easier so that our families don't suffer in the bargain. So it can, in the process, it can only be good. But there are lots of opportunities, and we need to work to harness it better for all of us. Thank you.
The last week from one region. So let me go to Greater Accra region.
Thank you, Chairman. Abraham, congrats. Mr. Chairman, I want to draw the nominee's attention to the sighting of telecom masts. Sometimes it becomes a problem in communities when these masts are sighted. We hear reports that it has some medical effects on the community. When these masts are being sighted, we don't even have access to EPA reports and all that. Respectfully, I want to ask the nominee, what is she going to do that when these service providers are coming to site their masts in the communities, that community engagement, first of all, need to be done so that the people can be part and parcel of whatever they wanted to do. So please, can you share with this committee what are you going to do so that these communication companies who are coming to site their masts in their communities should bring the people on board rather than creating problems for them at the end of the day? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, they are required to have a community engagement before the masts are set up. They are required to have EPA approval before the masts are set up. So I think that we need to educate all ourselves to ask the relevant questions before the masts are set up. And then if you've not been invited to a community interaction or engagement with them, then we can also insist on that. There's a catch-22 situation here. We don't want these masts. They are unsightly, and the jury is out about whether they cause diseases or not. There isn't evidence of that. And I think I've looked at the transcripts of the vetting, and almost every nominee for this ministry who sat in this chair has had to answer that question. But if they don't get the enough infrastructure up, then we get the black spots. You're traveling along the road and call drops and all that. They need to have enough of these masts up to be able to deliver the services that we need. But they need to have that community engagement and reassure the residents that it would not intrude too much in their lives and that the masts are secure enough before they are put up. I believe there's also a moratorium on the construction of new masts, but all that is matters that I'm still receiving briefings on, but we will work together to ensure that the dangers are minimized. The companies get the needed infrastructure they need to develop the quality of service that we demand and insist on. And we do not do something which would increase the dangers that the people are exposed to.
Mr. Chairman, my second question, CCTV cameras is a very important tool in fighting crime all over the world. In Accra, you see the CCTV sighted in some locations across the country. One is in front of the police headquarters, and I think some few places. And your ministry, I'm sure, has a role to play.
And so when I do, I'm sure that you can haul me to the floor of Parliament and I'll give you a fuller answer on it. But when I'm confirmed, I will liaise with the National Security Minister and see what we can do together to ensure that we leverage on technology to assist in the fight against crime.
My last question. The nominee is a woman of conviction. A very strong voice when it comes to affirmative action. Can you share with us that you continue to champion this cause or advocating for the rights of this vulnerable, or you are going to be docile like others have done? Thank you very much.
Working for the rights of the vulnerable, excluded, poor, marginalized, and underprivileged is a lifelong passion. And wherever I find myself, so long as God gives me breath, I can give you this assurance that I'll continue to speak up for the underprivileged. Thank you.
I'll come to the leadership now. No, we have agreed that we do 3-3 and come to the leadership now. Well, okay, all right, so I'll take Honorable Yele Chiri.
I'm saying that you will not forget me when you are in the kingdom. That my communities, many of them, no, not kingdom, it's a kingdom. My communities are not connected. When they go and stand on a hill or some spot, and I call them back, I can't get them. They say, you have just elected a man, he's not taking our calls. I want you to do something. You mentioned visa or something, VASAT or VSAT. Do something about it and speed it up, because I was assured that my communities will be connected earliest or the latest by August last year. Do you know when you can speed it up to?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will look at the work that has already been done and then follow up from there. Thank you.
Mainstreaming internet ICT in governance and public services delivery, the e-governance program. A lot of work has already been done. And I believe that if we want to decentralize
and get more people to be involved in governance. That should be the key, so that not many people should be traveling around to get services. Can I get the assurance that you will pursue this as contained in your manifesto?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can assure you that we will definitely pursue this. It is important that we use technology to make our lives easier. A lot of work, like you indicated, has been done already. We need to scale up and do a bit more. It particularly irks me about the e-Parliament. I asked about this when I first joined the House in 2013. We still don't have wireless access in this country, but I can happily report that by September this year, e-Parliament should be up and running, because more than half the work has already been done. The hardware and software has been acquired. They're liaising with Parliament to work out the specifications of what, the details of what actually needs to be done, and it should be done. If we have e-health, you can sit in your village somewhere and access the best specialist attention from our hospitals without moving, and get a proper diagnosis and be told what to do without having to travel long distances. Some work is going on in that direction with KNUST and Kolebu already. We should be able to get that also up and running. Registrar Generals has to be linked with Ghana Revenue Authority, and they also have to have the system so that you can actually register a company sitting from the comfort of your home, pay for it, fill out the forms, and do everything. Currently, my information is that you can only do searches at the Registrar Generals, and that's not the purpose for which that program was set up. So I'm still receiving briefing on many of these initiatives, but I can assure you that you have my full support in the NITA and the e-governance secretariat would have my full support in pushing through whatever needs to be done to make sure that the amount of money the World Bank is spending on this project doesn't become money down the drain. Because if we can get these systems up and running, it would help all of us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My question is, again, linked to an earlier one, where we were talking about the networks and service providers, and the rate at which our credit gets finished on phones. And they are talking about other things. But you are fortunate to have your son tell you which apps we should remove. Can you extend this kind of education to as many people as possible? Because they are taking a lot of money from people inadvertently. And we suspect there is some cheating going on. And that feeling, it is not good to be voting with our feet from this. Otherwise, they too will not be in business. So what can we really do? And the regulator, what can the regulator do to help we who are not very well, trained in the areas of ICT? Or simply put, those of us who were born before the computer was invented, BBC, what can the regulators do to save us all?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that the interest this question is generating points to the fact that a lot more public education needs to be done as to the proper use of our devices and how to maximize the data plans that we have. And so I'll liaise with the regulator and the Chamber of Telecommunications and the operators and see how we can put up a lot more of these public education seminars. It's also a business opportunity right there for young people like my son to also see how they can advance that information and earn themselves a few CDs while at it. So let's see what we can do to spread the information on the best use of our devices. Everybody has a smartphone now, but it can also chew up a lot of credit and battery. And so let's see how we can work together to have little either information and educational materials, posters, leaflets, or little seminars to educate the public on what to do to derive the most benefit from your data plans and your smart gadget.
Chairman would, sure.
Let me take one more from the majority, and then we come to the leadership, because you have many opportunities. So, Taliban, sorry, Honorable, Honorable Cabo.
My name is Anthony Abefakabo. Thank you very much, Madam Honorable Minister Designate. We in the MPP have worked closely with you, and we are very proud that His Excellency the President find you fit for this portfolio. Wish you the best. There's an important issue about radio licensing. And there is a new trend in our country where a particular radio station will have several licenses across the country and building one big media conglomerate, sometimes with a reach bigger than even the national radio stations. For instance, the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation or any of the affiliate stations. Are we going to continue with this culture? What are you going to do to address this very serious problem?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it is an area which agitates the minds of quite a few people. But I'm hoping that you confirm me quickly so that we can have stakeholder consultations on this matter and see how best to harness the limited spectrum at our disposal for the benefit of as many people as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
My second question has to do with the level of internet penetration in rural Ghana. I come from a very poor community. Laura, a very poor community. If you look at the poverty index, we are like 73% of our population is very poor. And many of the young people do not have access to internet services. Facebook, Google, and all these new applications are completely new things to young people in those areas. I want to get some assurance from you that rural Ghana will benefit from internet penetration and possible free Wi-Fi services in these underserved communities. What assurances or what program, what plans does your ministry have for communities, poor communities in Ghana, particularly communities in northern Ghana?
Thank you. No part of our country ought to be left behind in our quest to develop this country. And so I am glad that at least we have the beginnings of a fiber network around the country, which would make it possible to link up all the communities to a fiber ring and provide internet access to every community, working in tandem with the operators. Once the infrastructure is there, the road is there, then we can work to getting the little vehicles to run on the roads. So when we finish building up the Western Corridor link, then we would have a total fiber ring around the country. When we actualize the Eastern Corridor fiber and do the last mile connectivity, working with industry, we can be able to bring access to the internet as close to the doorstep of people as possible. I do know that we are building community information centers too around the country. I believe 20 have been built so far. Many of them have internet access. And GIFAC is also working to even train those who would use and access those facilities. So that can be a focal point of demystifying the use of the internet to every part of this country. They are in the districts and in the regions, not just in the district and in the capitals and the big cities. So when we can put up a bit more of these, we can be able to bring access to the internet to all these people. I'm even thinking of using the infrastructure of Ghana Post, which is everywhere in this country, and converting some of them into wireless, building wireless hotspots in some of these post offices around the country, which will make it possible for many of our rural folk to even access the internet through that and use that in their work. You can sell your fish if you're a fishmonger, or your yam if you produce yam, through the internet. If we promote e-commerce as well, if we have more secure payment platforms in place electronically, we can generate a whole new revolution, more or less, in the entire country using technology. So it is not too far-fetched. We have the beginnings, like I said, in place. It's up to us to link it together. And thankfully, at least the team in place now, and I'm sure with all the goodwill around this table and with the members of Parliament also keen to promote this, we can bring the 21st century to the doorsteps of our people and leapfrog into the technological age without wasting too much time. By the end of next year, the year after that, we should be able to see something concrete happening on the ground. And like I keep saying, it is doable. It is not rocket science. We just need the political will and the investment needed to do that. And there will be interest even amongst our development partners in supporting us if we were willing to develop any such project along these lines, which would bring the internet to the doorsteps of our rural folk. And that can help us see some major development in the lives of our people around the country. The basic building blocks are already in place. It is up to us to give effect to it and to actualize it. And I am committed to giving the leadership which will enable that to happen. If you confirm me, thank you. When you confirm me, thank you. When you confirm me, thank you.
Don't dare us, please. Thank you very much. My last question to the nominee. Madam Minister Designate, you have been a very outspoken person and very strong in the campaign of the New Patriotic Party for the last decade. Do you have any regrets about comments you've made before in the heat of politics? Any? Yeah.
I keep saying that if you open the door, we'll all walk through it. But sometimes we need to restrain ourselves as well. All that matters is we should recognize that we're all children of one mother, and we sink or swim together. And Ghana has space for all of us. We should be able to live together. The way we relate to one another across the political divide in Parliament, I think we should do a lot more of that outreach so that people will see that even though we're political opponents, we're not enemies. And I can see, yes, even though we're political opponents, we're not enemies. And we really do need to build bridges and stop the punch me, I punch you. At the end of the day, we all lose. Let's us learn to, and I'm speaking to myself here. We've all made mistakes, and we can all learn from that. But in our quiet moments, I'm sure we all know that we can do things differently and relate to each other better. And we can argue passionately and express ourselves forcefully. But let's draw the line at drawing blood. Sometimes we tend to overdo it. I'm as guilty of that as the next person.
Chairman, can the nominee assure this House that she is transiting from an acidic tongue to a very ministerial, diplomatic hustler? And for that matter, if there were any sins her tongue committed on her behalf, knowingly or unknowingly, she regrets them.
Honorable nominee, wait, can you rephrase acidic tongue and use a more acceptable language? Acidic tongue is like leading somebody into a temptation that I had acidic tongue. I'd rather you use a different.
Chairman, find a substitute for me. Okay. Acidic withdrawn. But there are instances you were bluntly vilifying of persons you were engaged in debate with, standing strong by your convictions. Are we assured of the emergence of a new hustler, a diplomatic hustler who guided by the tongue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that hustler is very much in evidence and has been for a while. At least I have had comments in that direction for the past couple of years. And I think that depending on where you find yourself, you should be able to also adapt to changing circumstances. An illustration I keep using is that you can't drive in fifth gear all the time. You really do need to crank up and then crank down, depending on the circumstances. But I must thank Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training Center for also opening my eyes to some of the dangers we unwittingly lead ourselves into with our actions and utterances. And it's helped me to step back and tone down a bit and pause a bit more before jumping into the fray. And Mr. Chairman, you have to commend me on that. I think you are seeing the new improved ESLA, and there will be a lot more of that in evidence. Thank you.
I'll commend you after 1 year, if it's still the same. Now we are the leadership.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I was wondering whether it was Honorable Osala I was hearing. Well, I pray that the born again is not because she's at the vetting. Anyway, Honorable Osala, in an answer to answer you gave to an earlier question about using Ghana Post facilities across the country to enhance rural and inland communication by use of internet. Do you by chance have an idea how you intend to get Ghana Post on its feet to do what is mandated to do?
I do have an idea, but thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've already started engaging with the leadership, the management of Ghana Post. They have a lot of potential. It hasn't been realized so far, but I think with the right leadership, with the right investment in human and capital resources, it can be a very profitable company, and I am committed to helping them to realize their full potential. If it works well, it will benefit a whole lot more of our people who otherwise would not have access either to postal services, to telephony services, or to the many other services, e-commerce, courier services that they could be used to facilitate. They have the beginnings of something that can make them a profitable company. And I will do whatever is in my power to assist them to realize that full potential.
Can I say by this answer that we'll see a new Minister of Communication who will be putting more emphasis on the Ghana Post, not necessarily neglecting the others, that maybe the telecoms, because that sector is better developed than the Ghana Post?
I believe so. I have spoken about it publicly. I have already engaged them, and I intend to help them to get on their feet and to run, if it is at all possible. And I think it is possible. Thank you.
And then the answer you gave earlier to a question, you alluded to the fact, which we all believe, is fact, that e-commerce can ease a lot of difficulties that all of us have. But you also agree that e-commerce easing difficulty without an efficient Ghana Post will be extremely difficult, because you could buy anything online, but if you still have to walk there to pick it, then there's no easing. Will you, as a matter of fact, see how you can develop the e-commerce vis-a-vis the Ghana Post to work together so that we can have this drive as we see abroad? You just sit, you buy, and some are fleet delivery, some are 2 days delivery, and you can choose which one you prefer and pay for it. Will you give that assurance to this committee that by the time Minister Osula leaves Minister of Communication, even if not completely done, we will see an infrastructure to get this country, get the e-commerce and the Ghana Post working together to deliver a better service?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll do my best to make sure that e-commerce takes off in this country, leveraging on the resources that are already available. And I see Ghana Post as a key component of that. So if they get the logistical support that they need, they get the right technology, manpower, financial resources that they need, through all kinds of arrangements, either a PPP arrangement or whatever, they'll be able to do that. And I can give you that commitment, Mr. Chairman.
Still on Ghana Post, you realize that when you walk around our streets and you see the long queues at the National Health Insurance offices, and people have come to renew their cars, to come and pick their health insurance card, will you consider getting National Health Insurance to work with Ghana Post as a way of helping to enhance the Ghana Post in its delivery, so that people do not need to walk and go and queue at the National Health Insurance office? I just want to see whether there will be that commitment to work with National Health Insurance Authority.
I believe so, not just the National Health Insurance Authority, but every other agency that needs to send its services directly to the people can use Ghana Post as a partner. But Ghana Post itself needs to be in the proper position to be able to assist and not be a hindrance to the services of those other organizations. And so we'll work together to get it back on its feet so that it can better assist in providing access, better access to the services that we all need, be it from Ghana, the health insurance, passports, driving licenses, all the other agencies, even the university admission forms, army, police admission forms, all those other possibilities are endless. But we need even food delivery parcels, how to even eat in Parliament. You know, if they had a proper courier service, they could be bringing food parcels to ministries, departments, and agencies across the length and breadth of the country. The possibilities are endless. They have to start thinking outside the box, look at the business opportunities there, link up with whichever partners they need, come up with a workable business plan, and I'm sure before long we would have a viable, profitable entity which would even be paying dividends to government for the shares that government holds. So I will do whatever is in my power to get that company back on its feet again. Thank you.
You are a member of parliament, and you've known over the years our struggle to e-parliament and the ups and downs. Yes, we now have a better gadgets in the chamber, but we are still limited in terms of getting the information earlier, able to read the screen, so we are virtually back to paper again. Having sat in the chamber for the past 4 years, what do you think your ministry, if given the nod, you will do to help bridge a gap with this difficulty Parliament has currently with the use of electronic gadgets in our operation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the first statements I made was on a paperless Parliament. And so I'm happy that we've got the little gadgets that we can read our order paper and vote some proceedings on. But we can take it one step further. It will facilitate our work if we had easy access to the internet to be able to do basic research, so that even sitting in the chamber, if we had Wi-Fi access, wireless access to the internet, we could work better. And NITA is just across the street. I have tasked them, and I've already started giving them grief on that as well. But I'm hoping that by the end of this year, they tell me that there's a fiber ring around Parliament. We're not deriving much benefit from it, Parliament. Let's give effect to that, do the last mile solution. They say Parliament needs to bring them their specifications or whatever. But whatever needs to be done to make sure that we are properly hooked onto the internet and can do our work better and reduce the amount of paper that we use in our work, I am committed to doing that. And I'm sure that you know that you have a keen advocate in me when it comes to that. If it works well, I benefit. And so it's in my interest make sure that e-Parliament really works. It will help in the document management system in this House. The Speaker will be able to track where every letter is. So will the leadership be. And we can also follow up on maybe committee allowances and anything else which may be held up. At the click of a button. I don't know if it can be provisioned in that manner, but let's think through what you put in is what you get. So how we configure the systems that we put out based on our needs is what will be done. But I'm committed to getting that done as quickly as possible.
Well, because you mentioned NITA, because I was the majority whip some months ago, they insisted we have to pay. Even when we made the payment, they insist we have to have a contract, knowing that we are neighbors, like you rightly said. And even though we paid over 4 or 5 months now, we still don't have internet because they are insisting that there should be proper contracting. As a minister who is also a member of Parliament, are you going to get NITA to be a little charitable to Parliament, knowing the challenges that we have here?
I'm trying to check to see if you've paid, because I have a list of those who owe NITA. Parliament House. Parliament House is actually paid, yes.
Are you a debt collector?
No, I am not a debt collector. But a lot of the agencies who use the services of NITA don't think they have to pay for it. They pay quite happily for electricity, for water, for telephone usage, but they don't think they need to pay for internet usage. Government has spent over $400 million putting in very expensive infrastructure to enable us work better, work more efficiently. NITA is having difficulty collecting payments from ministries, departments, and agencies for the use of those services. GiftMix needs to run on the NITA infrastructure. So it is incumbent on all of us to pay for the services that we need so that NITA can deliver more efficient services to all of us. So it's a catch-22 situation. But I'm committed to make sure that once the payments come, and as I've seen, Parliament has paid, And so NITA has to deliver the services to Parliament. I give you the assurance that I'll make sure that they do.
Well, whilst at it, I want it to ask them. They have received their money without a contract. So why do they want us a contract before they provide a service? Upon what basis did they receive the money, such that they must demand a contract before they provide the service? Ask them, and we'll ask you to answer in Parliament.
But let me throw this back at you. What were the terms and conditions under which you paid?
We wanted internet service, and we paid. And we thought that, well, as we tidy up the contract, just provide the service. They said, no, until you tidy up. So what about my money? They said, well, your money is safe in our accounts, but you have to get a contract before. And because of that, for almost 5 months, Parliament is struggling to provide internet facility to the job station and members.
I'm committed to working very, very quickly to resolve this matter so that we can have the internet services that we need for our work. And whatever is holding up the conclusion of the contracts would also be dealt with speedily. You have my assurance on that.
Chairman, I believe it's now my opportunity to congratulate the nominee, Osla Owusu Ekufu, and to wish her well. And Chairman and colleagues, just as you indicated a strong commitment to a dedicated national identification system that is of particular interest to Ghana's financial institutions, the Bank of Ghana and other commercial banks, to guarantee security and traceability of persons that they engage with. Can you share with us how you intend to finance the deployment of the national ID infrastructure, reconciling the various data that are being held? DVLA have their own data, the police have their own data, the National Communications Authority is holding on to its own data, National Health Insurance onto its own data. A unified data system built on a national ID. Give us when we should expect that you would initiate the process and a timeline that at least before the end of 2018, we can be assured that you would have deployed and every Ghanaian will have a dedicated ID card. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can give you the assurance that work has already started in that direction. And by the end of 2017, if we haven't finished, we'll be well on our way towards giving every Ghanaian a smart card and would have unified the databases that are currently existing and cleaned it up so that we can have more certainty going forward. As to where to get the money, I believe as part of the e-Transform project, the World Bank has already voted $25 million to assist the National Identification Authority with the preparatory work that it needs to do that. This government, so that money is there. Previous government wanted to reassign it to budget support, but it hadn't been done. So that 25 million is there for the work to begin. This government is also committed to this project, and so we'll find the money from whichever sources to make sure that this work is done. So I can confidently give you the assurance that as I indicated, there's a meeting going on currently as I speak, working out the house that this is going to be done. And we know where the initial money is going to come from, and we're going to work on that. I'm sure that when the budget is read in a few weeks' time, more details as to the financing would be laid before the House. But this is a project that is of utmost importance to this government and to all of us. And we are all committed to working towards making that work. Multiplicity of databases, the wastage, the cost implications of that do not help anybody. Even managing those databases and securing the data, making them talk together, verification of that data, it's a mess. And we can't continue like that.
Chairman, I'm looking forward to a regime, for instance, where you have an integrated ICT, mainstreaming all aspects of public life, that if the police was to do an arrest of any citizen, they should be able, even from their vehicle, to know when his last offense was, if it was a traffic offense, where his location and other. Is that assurance that we're getting from you, that your national ID card will have in it all these inbuilt facilities or structure? Because you don't want an instance where what we started, by the time you ended it, bring a national health ID card. Can you commit to that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's exactly what we're working towards. Linking all these various databases so that whether you've acquired a driving license properly or not can be ascertained by the police when an accident occurs using a handheld device, as is done in other parts of the world. And we will even get to the point where the police can even know whether you have your roadworthy certificate up to date or not. It will make it more difficult for criminals to escape through the net. It will make it easier. Information I got just last week was that 60 taxpayers account for 600%, well, 6 taxpayers account for 60% of the taxes that 600 taxpayers account for 60% of all tax revenues. And only 200,000 people are in the GRA database as having the personal identification numbers. Now, if we can get to the situation where everyone who's eligible to pay tax is properly accounted for, and there are over 10 million or so people who are eligible to pay tax can all be located and found, then it would make it much, much easier for the tax authorities to collect the proper revenues that are due us. Forget about whether you are in formal or informal employment. If you earn an income, you're eligible to pay tax. And it is something that we can do if we have the proper records of whoever lives and works in this country. That we can do having a proper identification system. So for tax collection, for crime prevention, for certainty of records, for reduction of fraud and corruption in the system, it is something that we ought to do as a matter of urgency. And that is why we're moving towards doing that by the end of this year.
You are becoming the Minister for Communication if this House approves you at a time that Ghana is ranked very, very high by the international community. I recall that I had the privilege even to represent Ghana to chair the ITU Council. Now, what is Ghana ICT Development Index in terms of mobile penetration and internet density?
I think we have 133% mobile penetration currently, which means that we have multiple SIM users. And I think the projection was for a 28 million population. That's not too bad, but we need to work towards reducing the multiplicity of SIMs that people use. Now that they're producing sets with dual and triple SIMs, it's making the mobile penetration even more. But I think we can work towards reducing that or improving upon that. Thank you.
Do you have any intention of using mobile money transfer as an ICT vehicle to improve tax collection that will affect both the formal and informal sector of the economy?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. It is a way to bring in the unbanked into the banking sector, and it is an easy, painless way. Everybody has of sending and receiving money. I'm going to be a key advocate of everybody signing up to it to send and receive money. And as we can even use that to put a little surcharge on the usage of that and enable government to earn some revenue from mobile money usage. We do need to put in place the proper regulations as well to protect the deposits of people in their wallets and the way that money is invested and used. We've done something along those lines, but I think we need digital financial services regulations to regulate this area. And I'm committed to working with my colleagues in finance and the Bank of Ghana to make sure that that happens. Thank you.
Chairman, thank you. I would encourage the nominee that one of the important institutions, if you want to be successful, will be to have a stronger ties with the Telecom chamber. I say so because you don't want to kill the hen that lays the golden egg. And in many instances, Kweku Sechiado's Telecom chamber offered very useful suggestions. For instance, matters of SIM registration and bringing finality to it. Can you indicate to us what you will do to ensure that nobody uses a SIM in Ghana without going through a registration process as part of measures to fight crime? I mean, can you imagine, I don't want to use a sad example to break you down, our colleagues, the Honorable J.B. Dankwa, you could in fact use a telephone to be able to track who spoke to who was where at what point in time. But without this system, we still have difficulty. So would you indicate to us how you used to, what plans you have to bring closure to the old business of SIM? I know that sometimes the telecos themselves will show some awkward and unacceptable resistance. But as minister, the policy is vested in you and the regulator is under you. What will you do?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We work very closely with the chamber and the operators to ensure that SIM registration doesn't just become wishful thinking. We need it for the security of our persons, our property, and our lives, as the example you pointed out indicated. And thankfully, having a more certain identification structure would also help. I think one of the major problems of SIM registration was the ability to verify the identity of whoever was seeking to register a SIM card and to tie it to one person, one location. But all that would be assisted immensely with the National ID project. So we're going to work very closely with the operators, with the chamber, to ensure that we give effect to that law and the regulator as well.
I do recall that under the Honorable Kandapa, we inherited an ICT policy. Will you review that policy, and what will you be seeking to do with a reviewed and new ICT policy? Bearing in mind that, again, you want to learn from best example. There's an annual GSM Congress, I believe, in Barcelona. Alasan Suhine, does that ring a bell in your mind? That best practice, particularly matters of rural telephony, you'll be able to read. But ICT policy, will you review it, and when should we expect you to take steps to do that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the ICT policy was formulated in 2005. The landscape has changed tremendously since then. It is obsolete and so needs to be reviewed. And so that's one of my utmost priorities. As soon as I'm confirmed, I'm going to bring together a team of experts working with the industry to look at industry trends and where we want to see this country go using ICT and develop an IT policy which is fit for purpose. Thank you.
I'm sure you, Honorable Nominee, I'm sure you are adequately brave, and from many of your answers. The National Communications Authority is a regulator. There were instances where we had a consumer forum which was facilitated by the ministry. I see Issa Yahya, your very able technocrat and bureaucrat at the ministry. along the line, we never had the consumer forum. That is when the kind of emotions that Chairman poured about his frustrations with his SIM could be addressed, where the Ghanaian public will have an opportunity to evaluate you, evaluate the regulator. Will you reinstitute the consumer forum and allow for the public to scrutinize and evaluate the performance of the telecom players?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, that's a very useful initiative, and I was sad to see it go. So it's one of the things that are very high on my agenda. And so we will be reinstituting the Consumer Forum for greater interaction between the operators and the consumers, to enable their concerns be addressed, to enable them share information about new products and new initiatives, and to enable consumers to vent and help them to also do, through that process, do a little bit of the public education that is needed. So it is something that we would do, not just look seriously into, but it's something that we would reactivate. Thank you.
I note that, Honorable Nominee and Chairman, that the matter of digital migration has so been exhaustively discussed by you to earlier questions. But just to remind you that the cutoff date is not your determination as minister. Per the Antalya Declaration, Ghana ought to have gone digital at the end of June 2016. Give us an indication what you will do in order that Ghana takes the benefits of a full digital environment, improve quality and improve the picture. So I heard you in your answer to the Honorable Ablakwa and to our earlier colleague, Honorable Jato, that we will extend. It is not within you to extend. The world will cut you off. That if you don't go digital at a certain period, you will not have an option, and you risk dark clouds in Ghana blamed on you poorly. So just to note that and give us an indication when you will, what you will do in order that we meet the international deadline, not at the convenience of Ghana or the Ministry of Communication. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the cutoff date is 2020. It's a period from 2015 to 2020, and we opted to do it in 2016, but we're unable to meet it, and then moved it to 2017. I am hoping that we'll be able to meet this 2017 deadline. We will be totally cut off if by 2020 we haven't switched from analog to digital, but we hope to do so well before that time. It is in our interest to make sure that the dividends that attach to going digital accrue to our people. Clearer sound quality, picture quality, and you can even yield more spectrum and do even more with the available spectrum. But I'm going to be working very closely with all the various operators in this industry to ensure that we are well within the period for a migration and do not suffer any, I don't know whether to call it a dundum or dumso. Digital a dundum.
Chairman, I refuse to...
You're out of order.
I refuse to respond to the nominee, but to bring her back to the exciting digital world. Will you assure this committee that you will dedicate benefits of the digital dividend for rural telephony to cover the unserved and underserved, as you stated?
Mr. Chairman, we have to. And that will be some kind of affirmative action to make sure that the rural, our rural populace also benefits from the digital dividend. So I will receive advice on how to do that, but it is something that we will seriously consider. Thank you.
Chairman, just to illustrate, for instance, you are driving from Togo to Yendi. Then in between is you have no access to telephone. Telephone or IT as an emergency response initiative. You want to be able to reach a family member if you are in difficulty. Or from, if Chairman gave me a community around Bekwai where he has difficulty accessing telephone and internet, and Troku to Bekwai, and then from Joapong coming towards Akusumbo. What will you do for seamless that Volu? You see, You didn't give me a clear before you brought that in. So, honorable nominee, what will you do to ensure continuous access to telephone as an emergency response instrument?
It is something that we need to do, and along the highways, we really do need to minimize the black holes and black spots along it where you can't get even connectivity. So I'd work with GIFEC, I'd work with the operators, and I'll work with NITA to see how together we can minimize, we can improve communication along our transport routes in the event of emergencies. You really do need to be able to reach help as quickly as possible. So this situation where you would have to go through all kinds of contortions before you get service is not something that we need to encourage. So we'll do whatever we can to minimize that as much as possible.
Thank you, Chairman. The country's universities, whether University of Ghana, University of Cape Coast, Kwame Nkrumah University, or UDS, or UMAT in Takwa, there's a generation of young people, you want them to have the opportunity and grasp of IT. What will you do to improve internet availability within the country's universities? What plans do you have?
I think work is even, thank you, Mr. Chairman, work is even underway to make all our universities at least Wi-Fi zones so that all our students would have access to free Wi-Fi on the campuses. And GIFEC can do that with the VSAT that they already have, and they all have wireless fiber access to the various campuses. So it is something that we just need to find out who's going to pay the cost of providing those services, and government is committed to doing that. I think it's in our manifesto, and so it's something that would give effect to.
Chairman, my other concern is Ghanaian players and the Ghanaian private sector having a pride of place within the telecom ICT environment. I recall that we issued a policy directive to ensure that a certain percentage of its holding, particularly when we got to deploying long-term evolution, LTE, WireMax infrastructure, that saw the like of Surfline, Blue, and others come into the market. It appears that we are drifting again favorable to a dominant market player, which is not in the consumer interest. What will you do to arrest this trend?
That's a very difficult question, Mr. Chairman, but I'll attempt an answer. I need to work with the stakeholders to ensure that we give Ghanaians also a stake in this very potentially lucrative industry. However, every conversation I've had points to the fact that our market is saturated. With the size of our population and the number of operators there, it isn't very profitable to run a telecommunications service in this country. So some consolidation has to take place. Within that consolidation, we also need to remember that the interest of Ghanaians in owning equity in these companies isn't sacrificed. When we did the Westel sales and purchase agreement, it was put in there that 20% of the shares should be sold to the Ghanaian public within 3 years. This agreement was signed in 2007, and I haven't yet seen any of those shares being floated on the stock exchange for the benefit of Ghanaians. So for circumstances beyond the control of the actors, which is the government of Ghana, GMPC, and the various operators, Ghanaians haven't derived benefit from that. I'm going to be having conversations with them that whatever arrangement they come up with, they preserve the interest of Ghanaians, a significant proportion of Ghanaians in the equity holdings in some of these companies, so that we're not crowded out of this potentially very profitable industry.
I should believe that your technocrats, if they have not, you must show interest in it, that the 10-year moratorium that was given to Vodafone for us not to be able to develop further fiber using grid-co lines have since lapsed. That gives you an opportunity to deploy more fiber infrastructure. But there is debate on taxes on mobile money transfer in M-Pesa, Kenya. Do you have any intention, even though that's inimical to financial inclusion? And I'm sure Sechiado and Co will fight you and fight you well as industry players. Do you have any intention to introduce taxes on mobile money transfer?
Mr. Chairman, it's not my place to introduce taxes. That's the Minister of Finance's job, working with Parliament. So we would have the necessary industry consultations and see which direction the Minister of Finance and the President would want us to go. But I think that Ghanaians would understand if we place a small surcharge on making life easier for all of us. But that's a conversation that's still in its very nascent stages. So we'll see how things go.
The judiciary was supposed to benefit from the e-Transact initiative in order to enhance the delivery and administration of justice using IT instrument. What assurances can we have for you for an improved justice delivery taking advantage of IT?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think they're very much a part of the e-Transact initiative, and so e-justice, as it's termed, is also part of it. And quite a bit of money has been spent in upgrading their services and making it possible for them to use technology to enhance and improve access to justice, particularly for the indigent. And so I would do whatever I can to facilitate that process. I am yet to be briefed on where they actually are and what the issues impeding the speedy rolling out of this service are. And once I'm confirmed, I'm sure it's one of the conversations that I'll be having very quickly to ensure that we improve access to justice for all using technology.
I understand that you have moved into you probably will be moving into, if you are not operating as president representative in the new Ministry of Communication and the National Data Center that commenced in 2010. I recall when we initiated it, there were those who were very critical of me and many others of initiating that particular project. But just to close it up, what new things? Ghana has gone through one or more decades of taking advantage of IT. I saw the first era of President Kufuor largely dealing with the laws to govern the IT environment. You saw President Mills and President Mahama lay infrastructure and invest in IT infrastructure. It is our expectation that you would now work on content and application. What will you do to improve content and application so that Ghanaians will take full advantage of ICT?
I don't presume to speak as an expert in this area, but I know that there are a lot of possibilities and there's a lot of expertise even amongst our young people. If you look at the incubator center and the applications that they're already developing there, they need more investment in resources and more investment in capacity. But like you said, the infrastructure is there. The Kofi Annan Center is there. The Ghana Technology University College is also there. We can give them more training, build up their capacities to deliver better so that they can train more young people in the development of the apps and the content that we need to ride on the infrastructure that is already there. We need to use the investments that we have made in this infrastructure for our benefit. It is of no use laying the fiber and putting it on the ground or building a data center if we're not using it for anything. For starters, we can all move away from the Yahoo and Gmail addresses that we're all using. So that is one major commitment that I'm making, that all government employees, ministries, departments, and agencies, including myself, get proper email addresses and do government businesses on the government platform hosted at the data center for security of the information and for institutional memory, so they don't leave employment and go with that information on their private emails. Let's do government work on the government portal, and we can all start. So hopefully by the end of this year, all of us will be using proper email addresses. Out.gov, parliament.gov.gh.
Chairman, may I come to...
This is the last one. You said 3 left.
Yes, Chairman, quality of service is still problematic in Ghana. Call drop is still unacceptably high. But we are particularly interested in your sector contribution to addressing unemployment and job creation. You have the BPO industry, which is an emerging employment opportunity. And then also you have the ICT park. I believe that there was a pact between Ghana and Mauritius for the development of the Tema ICT Park, which was also developed in 2010 as a collaboration between the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the Ministry of Communication. What will you do for President Nana Addo Dankwa's success using IT? Yours is not one factory, one district. What will you do to do one ICT, one laptop, and find a job for him? Thank you. On that note, Chairman, I'm done if she responds to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Accra Digital Center is already up and running, so we have a plug-and-play BPO center available for use for any business process outsourcing company which needs to set up in Ghana. There were 2. They've gone because of Dumso, but there are already moves afoot to attract more BPO centers, workspace, BPO companies into this country. We've already begun talks with the Mauritians to activate the MOU on the technology parks. And when they came for the inauguration, we met with them and they indicated their continuing interest in this project. And we've also indicated that we would continue with that. So before long, we should see more young people getting more jobs in the IT industry through these initiatives that are already underway. I would just encourage them to build their own capacity to take advantage of the opportunities that are available. And we would ensure that that also becomes another growth pool for the economy. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You were not here when it was your turn. If you want to ask any question.
Honorable nominee, congratulations. I want to ask one question, which is e-books. Many have advocated that in our schools, we do have many of our books accessible through the internet to facilitate the study of our children and also to build their capacity in the area of ICT. As the Minister designates for communication and a member of this committee, a proud member of this committee, I want to have your take on e-books and how you would facilitate that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I was having a discussion with some young people on this very matter just a couple of days ago. There's a multiplicity of e-resources. There's some duplication in this area as well. When you look at the distance learning programs that are being undertaken by the various campuses, we can have an e-library resource that they can all tap into, and that will reduce the cost for all of them and encourage uptake of the use of e-books in this area. For some of us old school people, it's difficult reading from tablets. We still want the feel of the paper and the book in our hands. But I'm sure for the young people, they don't mind using the e-books, and the future is theirs anyway. So we need to encourage them. It will facilitate research. make them whole library resources available to them at the click of a button and make it easier for them to study. So that's something that we're going to be working very, very seriously towards. All our libraries, Ghana Library Board, ought to have a digitized section as well. And they also need to move away from the Stone Age and into the digital age. It is something that we need to encourage. It will make learning easier, more accessible. It wouldn't matter where in the country you are. You can have access to the same resources, whether you are in GIS or you are in another school up in the hinterland. I don't want to name any town. But that's an area that we need to look into. There are a lot of agencies working in this area. So what I can do is to bring them all together, facilitate a conversation so that we can decide that this is the way we want to go, put our curriculum in a digitized format and use the standardized way of also facilitating teaching and learning. It would entail capacity building for both the teachers, the instructors, and the students, but it is something that we can do to reduce access, to improve access and reduce the cost of accessing these learning materials as well. Thank you.
Okay, I have two questions from the public. One came through the honorable member for Tano North, and it is this that the questioner wants to know what she will do to ensure, the nominee will do to ensure that information given to the telecom agencies during registration of SIM are protected.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We need to look at the manner in which we register our SIM cards. And it's a bigger problem as to how we protect our data generally. The Data Protection Commission is there. It also needs to be assisted to be able to do its work better. However, once we have one secure national database, we can be sure that the firewalls we put around that will protect the individual information stored in there. And whoever accesses it will have to go through very stringent protocols before they can do that. But then those of us who need to register and all of us who handle or use information and data need to register with the Data Protection Commission. And they also need to be assisted to solve the teething problems so that they can also do their work in protecting our data as efficiently as possible. We don't pay much attention to it. We're a bit lax in that area. But identity theft is a serious problem in the developed world. And we're not insulated from that. It is something that will affect us at some stage. So if we start taking steps to protect our personal information now, it would help. And that is one thing that I'm committed to doing.
The second one is from a media practitioner. And it says that media men are often treated shabbily at national programs and national events. When given a nod, what will your ministry do to help the media, especially regards to the first-hand information protection during national events? Will that come under you?
No, Mr. Chairman. I believe that is a question which you should properly put before the Minister Designate for Information, because the ministry has been split.
Chairman, partly the nominee should be open to respond to part of this question because she's aware, and I'm sure even if we finish this session without putting the question to you and probably the Minister for Information, the media and the public will not forgive us. A broadcasting bill is something that the country needs. Much of the problem is the conflict between the National Media Commission and an entity that would be under your watch, the National Communications Authority, as to who has the power and right. While the NCA is technically competent and I don't want to prejudice my question. You need to find a way to resolve that issue. So that is related to what the chairman is asking. A commitment that Ghana will have a broadcaster bill working in collaboration with your colleague, incoming minister, if approved, for information, and then dealing with this theft issue that some aspects of media, like radio and television, comes clearly under your regulatory regime.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm committed to working with all stakeholders in this area to ensure that we have a saner climate for all of us to operate in. It is important that we deal with the content issues. I believe it was the Subsidiary Legislation Committee or the Communications Committee in the last Parliament had a look at some regulations which had some problems. But we will work with all the stakeholders and look at the legal regime within which the NCA and the Media Commission operate so that consumers aren't shortchanged and that we derive the best benefit from the operations of our radio and television operatives. Thank you.
The last question is from me. We are advised that we should get digital TVs and all TVs should go digital. But ever since I have had one, anytime it rains, then the network is something is keeping going. The reception is so bad. The pictures are blurred and so on. So I asked myself, what value did I get from migrating from here to the digital? Can you explain to us when we can expect no interruption, whether rain or shine?
We haven't quite done the full migration yet, so let's just watch this space. If we do it by September, I'm sure we would get improved picture quality and sound. Once we do the digital switch, we're still watching a mix of analog and trying out the digital, and not all the sites are operational as yet. So that is why you'll be having that problem. I did ask, and they gave me a very long technical answer, which I didn't quite understand. So I will seek more information in this area.
Okay, thank you, nominee, for attending upon the committee. Are there any persons to be acknowledged?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, the following are the people who came to support the nominee. Madam Christina Brago Diawo, mother of the nominee. Mr. Sam Ekufo, husband. Mokowa Adu Jamfi Bray, Professor Adu Jamfi, Mrs. Victoria Amwafo, a sister. Claudia Atrams, also a sister. Isa Yaya, Chief Director of the Ministry of Communications. Mr. Joe Anoche, Acting Director, NCA. Mr. Osei Puni Abrekuma West, Chairman of the MPP. Mr. Kwesi Ofori, First Vice Chair, Abrekuma West, MPP. Mr. Kwaku Sechi Ado, CEO, Ghana Chamber of Telecoms. Mr. Sam Somua, University of Ghana. Hajia Hamdatu Ibrahim, is it Jibrin? First Vice Chair, CPP. Reverend Afobre, Mr. Resford Owusu is an uncle, and Mr. Kwesi Owusu also an uncle. Mami Efua Akuto, Deputy Communications Director of the New Patriotic Party. these are the people who came. Thank you.
We thank you all for coming to support Honorable Esla also Ekuful. Esla, you hear from us. You know what we do after here. So, yes, you can now come back and ask questions.
Many thanks for staying here on Joy News. Just gone by was the veteran of Minister Designate for Communications, Esla Owusu Ekuful, and she responding to a couple of interesting questions. Notable among them is one asked by a minority leader in Parliament, Haruna Idrisu, on reinstituting the Consumer Forum of the National Communications Authority. And she mentioned that was very dear to her heart, and it will be reinstituted. And well, she said that would also give consumers the opportunity to address issues they have with service providers in the communication industry. He also mentioned telephone or IT as an emergency response instrument. And the Minister Designate for Communication, Esla Owusu Ekuful, said that she would work with stakeholders to minimize the black holes, especially along the highways and transport routes, and she would also work to increase connectivity along those lines. She also mentioned that she'll be working to improve internet access on the various campuses in the country, and she also mentioned that that is in their manifesto, and she was going to work hard to achieve that. On encouraging the private participation of individuals in the communication sector, she said that the system was quite saturated, and that's why it looked as though there was just there were just a very few dominant players in the industry. She said she was also going to work at that. She also mentioned that if she's given the opportunity to serve as the communications minister, she would work to get a unified data system from the various institutions. So really, that's it for Minister Designate for Communication, Esla Owusu Ekuful, and we know that the next in line would expect two gentlemen to appear before the Parliament's Appointments Committee today, and I'll be giving you their names shortly. Joseph Kofiada will be appearing, and he is Sanitation and Water Resources Minister Designate. Also, Kwesi Amwako Atta, who's the Minister Designate for Roads and Highways, he would also appear before the committee. We'll bring you all those vetting processes here on your Joy News channel, but would have to end it here for this particular session with Esla Owusu Ekuful. Up next is Inside AFCON with Nathaniel Attel. My name is Benny Sabubedu. Many thanks for your company.